Hello Orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids. From what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids in my collection are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. What we have today is a mini Phalaenopsis orchid. This one is a no ID from my local grocery store, but it's been a long time since I see this orchid's bloom. I think it's well over 2 years, and finally it's here. This one is currently in full water culture, well, I should say water culture method, and depending on the weather, sometimes I let it dry for more days than when the roots are wet. But going back in time, 2018, mid-year, end of June, it was growing lots of roots and growing new leaves. It was just, doing its thing, trying to get back to, I guess, normal. And then, throughout the summer, it was just growing leaves and roots, and that was it. But it's always been grown in water culture ever since it finished the bloom, its last bloom 2.5 years ago. What you're seeing here really is how I kind of go about watering this orchid regularly or typically. And what I do is I use the blue outer cup as the sort of saucer. And when I dump out the water, I put the water in the blue outer cup, but then when I come back home, I would pour the water back in. So in a way, every day I'm kind of doing this back and forth. And usually that's how I do it for orchids that are in need of more of an ICU, or if I feel this orchid really needs to have that shorter wet-dry cycle. And then if the solution is having, say, like some kind of liquid seaweed or special fertilizer or some kind of stimulant, and then that's how I would do it. One day dry, one day wet, or during the day it's wet and then at night it's dried, or vice versa. So that's just my lazy way of doing it. And here at the same thing, I use the outer cup to kind of store the water, and then I reuse it, and then maybe after a week then I would change out the water. So that's kind of how I use it. I don't always just use brand new water every single time. And so far, I think it's working out pretty well for me and these orchids, because there are regular grocery store phals, so I kind of use them as experiments, and they seem to be doing pretty okay. Fast forward mid-September 2018, it was continuing to grow a new leaf and more roots. And this is right after I gave this orchid water, so you can see all the viable roots turning green. So I knew this orchid was doing pretty well. And a lot of the roots inside the cup had already anchored itself, had already attached to the edge of the cup. So in a way, this orchid couldn't be taken out unless I soak it really well and try to, I guess, move around a little bit, push into the cup. So toward the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, it put out a spike, and then it continued to grow, and probably around February that the buds start to get bigger and bigger. I did have to leave at around end of February for business trip, and when I came back on February 20th, the first bud blasted due to one day while I was gone due to a high temperature on that day. But then after I came back, with every other orchids were doing fine. Many of them were still in buds at the moment. No orchid other than this one. This is the only one that was having continuous bud blast. All other orchids were stable. My condition was stable because I came back already. So I couldn't figure out why for a few days. And then pretty soon, beginning of March, its first flower opened, and that's when I realized, oh yeah, this orchid actually looked like this. The flower looked like this, because it's been well over 2 years since its bloom, since I purchased it. So I couldn't say that I remember exactly what the flower looked like, but now I do. Okay, so going back to the bud blast. The buds, I just think that this orchid overall is more sensitive than other orchids because, and here's why. This orchid is in water culture, and because I don't always give too much water. You know, typically if it's water culture orchids, the most conventional water level or most accepted water level is like a third of the roots submerged in water. But I find that a little too high sometimes for most of my orchids, so I actually usually only give less than half of an inch of water at the bottom of the cup. And because the roots are long enough to reach the bottom of the cup, so I really don't need to have a third of its roots submerged in water to properly hydrate this orchid, right? The roots at the bottom can totally do that job without having too much water in the container. So April 2019 was when all the flowers opened, and of course you can see there were quite a few many buds blasted, and that's because I had to constantly add water, take out water, or just observe the roots. You know, I think it's just a lot of moving around. There weren't that many environmental condition changes. There wasn't, because many of my other orchids that were in bud at the moment didn't have any bud blast. So this one was just really sensitive, and that's because I moved it a little bit more than I handle other orchids, and because it's in water culture, and that's really the reason why. So I have been thinking, because this orchid is so sensitive, what if I change the growing method to something with media? So that way, as long as I give it a set amount of water, for example, 1/4 cup of water each time, but then because it has media, so I don't have to worry about overwatering or underwatering, because typically 1/4 cup of water in any kind of media in my environment gives enough time to have that 1 week wet dry cycle. In other words, at the end of a week, 7 days, I can pretty much be sure, 99% sure, that this orchid can be watered with another 1/4 cup and restart the wet dry cycle. Restart from the wet cycle, I should say. So that's what I've been thinking about doing, a change that I've been thinking about doing for this orchid. But depending on the growth that I see after the flowers are completely gone this time, I may, maybe continue with water culture just to see if next year it will continue to have as many bud blasts. And if it is, then I would know this orchid is just much more sensitive. Maybe that's what I'll do, but maybe I will just start to, add media to the cup, so that way I know. Maybe, this can be easily converted to the moss no-hole growing method, right? Because a lot of the roots are already anchored itself onto attaching to the edge of the cup already, so I really don't want to take it out. And the only easier method that I can think of is simply add sphagnum moss to it, so that way, but it has to be very loosely added into the cup, so that way it's a no drainage hole sphagnum moss growing method that I have talked about in my channel. What do you think? Let me know whether I should continue to use water culture for this orchid, or maybe I should simply add moss to it, so next time when it has buds, it would not blast as many buds like this time because of the way that I add water for my water culture orchids. What do you think? Let me know. And before I close this video, I want to answer one subscriber question. This person asked me, have I purchased any orchid from eBay, and how much do I trust the sellers on eBay? I have to tell you, yes, I have purchased orchids from eBay, but most of the time I prefer ordering orchids from online reputable nursery because it's a hit or a miss. Sometimes it's just a matter of luck. Sometimes you do get some really good, honest seller selling you good stuff, but sometimes You know, photos are deceiving, and my experience is rather mixed, and that seems to be in line with my friend's experience as well about eBay purchases. So that's just something I want to share with you. It's just my opinion, but yes, I have orchids from eBay, but not all of them. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!